Hi, Cynthia. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Thank you for being here. It is so good to have you.
I am very pleased to be here. I was very happy when you asked me to be on your program.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I would like to have a little introduction. Would you please introduce yourself with your work, with your interests?
And I live in the western part of the United States, well, somewhat centrally located. Um, Kansas now. I used to be in the West for much of my adult life in Arizona and New Mexico. Now I'm in the state of Kansas, which is centrally located in the United States. And I have had an interesting life to bring me here at this point. Um, I am, as I'm sure you've read on my bio, a documentary film producer and writer and lecturer. I speak on the films that I've made, which is my favorite part actually, going out and meeting people and talking about the films. Um, I would like to um, really greet everyone, wherever you are, whoever you are, and tell you that I make films about universal oneness and peace. And so always delighted to meet people from other countries and other parts of the world. I have always loved to travel and meet people. That's one of my characteristics of world traveler, and I love to travel and meet people. That is the best part of travel, I think, in addition to seeing different parts of the world. But I use that curiosity in my work of documentary filmmaking. So I have started making films about 15 years ago. Before that, I was a college educator and also in the city council in Scottsdale, Arizona. Uh, Probably the most important, um, I guess you'd say, event in my life is when I was in my 40s, I had a started to fail. And I'm going to step over and plug in this phone to make sure that I don't lose connection. I am. Um, I was, after I had that uh, nearly fatal disease and was on dialysis for a while, I then recovered, uh, thank God. And then my husband, unfortunately, contracted cancer, and he was my husband of 25 years, and he ended up transitioning at the age of 49, and I was 47. And I bring this up, feel that was a major turning point in my life. Of course, I'd had other events that were important, but I say that because I feel that's when my deepening of my spirituality started to occur. Is I lost my husband and had also had that nearly fatal uh, disease. I did recover from it, and that was great. But then I had the loss of my husband. very traumatic. I mentioned because after that time, I was on a spiritual path, and I had been born and raised as a Roman Catholic, but after my husband's death, I deepened in that practice, but I also began to um, look for other avenues of spirituality in addition to that, and began to be on a search, as you will, of different paths and studying them. Um, I was elected as a city councilwoman in Scottsdale, Arizona. And during that time, 9/11 occurred. Um, that was a very traumatic event for the United States. Other countries had experienced that kind of violence, but the United States hadn't in a while, and it was very shocking to us. And of course, all kinds of misinformation came out about here about who caused it and all of that. I was in the Arizona, Phoenix area at the time, which is western in the United States. And right after 9/11, a man was murdered, a Sikh man, because they thought he was Muslim. And it was very tragic all the way around. No one should be shot at all, of course, but it was, kind of a stupid American who didn't know one person killing this man. Of course, no one should have been murdered. So it was quite a volatile area that I was in on the city council. And it was during that time that the Muslim community came forward and wanted to build their first mosque in Scottsdale, Arizona. Now, there had never been one there. And we had a law in Scottsdale, Arizona, that any religious faith could practice, and they could build their own place of worship, and that was allowed by law. However, because of the volatile atmosphere and the hatred that was swirling around the community, there were people who were opposed to the mosque being built. I rotated. I was one of 7 council members, but I rotated just out of synchronicity, you would say, to lead the 2 meetings that were going to approve or disapprove the mosque. Now, actually, it should have been, of course, outright approved because that was the law. However, there were things that were called into question as, such as the height, the color, the traffic issues, and so on. But these were all details to be worked out. But there was a group of people in Scottsdale who did not want that mosque built because of their hatred for Muslims at that time. So I went ahead and chaired the meetings, and I was very, very adamant and dedicated that every person would be allowed to speak, but no one would be allowed to defame any other person or their religion. We did end up passing, I'm happy to say, the approval of the mosque being built, and with only one saying no out of 7 people. 6 people approved it, only one person said no. So, of course, it has been built, and there's been a community there ever since. That was right after 9/11. So it was quite a test of my little community, but most of all, it was a test for me, I felt, because I felt it was a real opportunity for me to act in an interfaith way and to embrace another religion, and allow it to move forward, its own followers to worship as they will. And of course, that's supposed to be the bedrock foundation of the United States. It's worked out that way. And people don't believe that others should be able to practice their own faith. So I had an opportunity in my own life to help another community, another faith, build their own place of worship and make sure that that happened in Scottsdale, Arizona, America, right after 9/11. So anyway, I only mention that because it allowed me to become even more interfaith when I saw the hatred that was swirled up after 9/11. It allowed me to open my heart even more to other paths and other faiths. And I started on my own journey, which has continued ever since. So, um, and then I began to make documentary films and incorporated the interfaith idea into them, such as one that I co-produced called Globalized Soul, that we filmed at the Parliament of the World's Religions, of which all faiths are represented and all paths, and even atheism, in addition to faiths. So all paths are represented, and we made a film about that religious diversity. So my own experience with religious diversity has been very important for me as a person in my own spiritual development, but also in my work, my documentary filmmaking. Now I just completed 2 documentaries on Mahatma Gandhi, and one of the aspects that we highlight in those 2 documentaries, which are being shown in the United States on PBS stations, but also around the world in countries such as Southern Africa, Italy, the Middle East countries are showing them. And one of the themes that we play up in the Gandhi films is the theme of interfaith and his desire. Actually, ever since he was a young child, he embraced all faiths and thought that we could all live together.
That's one.
So that kind of brings me up to who I am.
Yeah. Cynthia, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So this was good to know about a little background, how you started making films. What was the motivation behind making a documentary on Rumi?
Well, that too was a result of 9/11, because after discovering on my own, this path of embracing all faiths and allowing them to, worship the way they will, my co-producer Kel Kearns and I decided that we knew that Rumi was actually the most popular poet in the world, around the world, and also his biography would be a good way, a good channel, really, to bring forward the beauty of Islam and Sufism and the whole stream and so of that. And so we wanted to bring that beauty forward in a way that people could be educated by, but also be uplifted by. Of course, how can you not be uplifted by Rumi and his beautiful poetry? Perhaps the greatest poet who's ever lived. And so after that occurred, that 9/11 event that I've talked about, which was so traumatic here in the United States, we decided that the best way we could promote unity and oneness in humanity would be to tell his story. And so we started with that idea. However, it's also interesting that we had a synchronistic occurrence. As I mentioned, I was on an interfaith path at that point in my life, and a friend told me about a dinner that was being sponsored by an organization that was an interfaith dinner, and did I want to attend? And so I did, and it was in Phoenix, Arizona. and my co-producer and I happened to sit next to somebody who was from Turkey, and we talked about Turkey, and we knew that Rumi was born in what is now Afghanistan, and then ended up living in Turkey for many years. And so this person was saying, you should really go to Turkey. It's a beautiful country. You would love it, and you could visit the Rumi shrine. And so we began to get this idea that yes, we could, and we would go. And he more or less invited us to go. We could go, could do filming, and could make a film that would be very timely, about this great poet, but would also be an educational tool for people who didn't know anything about Islam or Sufism or anything like that. And so we did that. And so that dinner, which was very, again, sadistic, and I think in the spiritual path, especially the Sufi path, as far as I know, there are a lot of coincidences, and this is one. We happened to sit next to this man who was from, and started talking about it and how we should go, and like I said, more or less invited us. And then another occurrence, I went to an interfaith conference, and there was a professor, Dr. Akbar Ahmed, who is from Pakistan, and he went. He's now at the American University in Washington, D.C., and he was speaking at this interfaith conference, and he was talking about Rumi. And when I heard him, bulb went off, and in my head, and I called my sister. You know what? He thinks just like we do. He's talking about Rumi, how Rumi can be a great bridge during this time of that there was a rift, it seemed like, between the East and the West. And I think Rumi would have loved that, to be a bridge. I think he was always trying to bridge people's hearts. And so seeing that professor made me think he could be in our film as one of our great commentators, and he was. Excuse me. So so that was another kind of synchronicity that occurred, where I realized, wow, we can really make this.
I'm sorry, Cynthia, I
I went
cannot
out
hear
for a
you
moment, I think,
properly. There is distortion. Can you please?
Can you hear me?
There's a distortion. Can you please check your internet connection? Yeah, now it's fine. Now the we have the visual, and I guess.
Is that better?
Yeah, it is. It is now.
Is that?
Yeah, it is better now. It is
okay?
It is better.
I just got a message on my phone, said we apologize for the. Oh, maybe that's your message. I don't know, but it seems like there's
Yeah, I guess
an
there was
interference or something. Yeah.
there was. So, how was your journey? How it started? Like, it was uh, knowing Rumi, as you are a poetess, you are in self a poetess. You have that poetess thing. Did you know Rumi earlier, or you just came to know Rumi with with discussing someone? How did you reach Rumi? How did
How
you
did I
know
reach
Rumi?
him? That's a good question. That's a great question, actually. And I would ask, does anybody ever really know Rumi completely, except maybe Shams? But
Yeah.
yeah, but I it was a long process of immersion for me into. I went to Turkey 3 times, to Konya 3 times, um, but also I interviewed a lot of scholars, Rumi scholars, and Rumi translators, and I myself did, as I do on every film, extensive research and reading, different translations of him, reading about him, reading what others have said about him, trying to
Yeah.
get a variety of approaches. Even though I must say, when I the first translation I read was by Coleman Parks, because I was in a spiritual bookstore and the book literally fell off the shelf, the way they say sometimes the book you're meant to read, falls in your hands or something like
Yeah.
that, or somebody gives it to you. And this was a case of Coleman Parks, The Essential Rumi, kind of fell off the shelf, and I picked it up and I opened it up and I said, and I think that any translation of Rumi that I've ever seen, his heart still comes through. I mean, there are better translations than others, but into English, but still, it seems like his heart comes through. It's like I've read so many translations of the Tao, Tai Ching, and it still comes across. But anyway, I opened up this translation of Rumi and I read it and I said to myself, I was amazed. I did not know that anyone could describe the experience with the divine in that way, that anybody could, describe that mysterious experience, that ecstatic experience that 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 he brings, that he has, and that he brings across. And so I was just really touched and moved, and
I guess there is a problem. I guess there is a problem. Sorry. We have to uh, wait for Cynthia. Let's Friends, I'm sorry, we are having some issue to connect with Cynthia. I hope we'll figure it out and we'll organize a session again very soon. आप तमाम जो लोग देख रहे हैं मैं उनसे माजरत करता हूँ. हमारी ये कोशिश थी कि हम स्मूथली इस सेशन को कंडक्ट कर पाएँ, लेकिन कनेक्टिविटी इशू आ रहा है सिंथिया के एंड पे और शायद हम इसे अब मज़ीद कंटिन्यू ना करें और हम एक और सेशन सिंथिया के साथ इसी टॉपिक पे और इसके साथ साथ मज़ीद मौज़ूआत पे जल्द रखेंगे. आप तमाम का साथ रहने का शुक्रिया. बहुत नवाजिश, बहुत शुक्रिया.